everyone, and thank you for joining me for this episode of Financial First Aid. Today, I have the honor and pleasure of having Liz Elizabeth Faircloth. Liz was born and raised in a middle class family in New Jersey, where her home was filled with love, but going out to dinner was a big deal. From an early age, she always had a desire to serve others and evidenced that by obtaining a master's degree in social work. Her brother-in-law, who was the only entrepreneur that she had known at the time, gave her a copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that changed the trajectory of her life forever. I had the honor of having Sharon Lecter, who was the co-author of it. She did a podcast with me as well. I was coaching with her for about 12 weeks. It was a great experience.
Wow. Oh,
I
that's awesome.
digress about you. The years following exposure to that book, she took numerous courses about real estate and made numerous attempts to get an offer accepted. Finally, her boyfriend, who was now her husband, they purchased their first investment property, a duplex with none of their own money because they didn't have any. She started in her 20s and not knowing anything about investing, business, and with no money to invest. Fast forward 16 years later, their team now owns and manages millions of dollars of real estate. What most people don't know is that this evolution came with lots of lows, loss, heartache, and challenges. As someone who has earned everything she has today, she's learned so many lessons from not giving up on her dream to become a successful entrepreneur. She's managing and balancing her life as a woman. She's constantly working to balance all the priorities of her life, from being a mom, a great mom, to young children, to being a wife and business partner, to taking care of herself. She's a featured speaker on Bigger Pockets, which, if you know anything about real estate investing, is one of the most popular, if not the most popular, source for real estate investors to exchange information, ideas, and network. The obstacles and struggles faced by her as a woman gave birth to an idea. Liz Faircloth and her partner Andressa Gadelli have created a community of female real estate investors called the Invest Her Community. These two ladies are passionate about empowering women to be all they can be. They have co-authored a book along with 15 other women real estate investors called The Only Woman in the Room, which is available on Amazon. They have developed a podcast. They have developed a Facebook community and a network of meetups throughout the entire US. And there's also a chapter in Canada. It is no longer an idea, it is a movement. Just this past weekend, they conducted a virtual summit called Level Up, which included not only a group of outstanding women investors, but also featured the one and only Lisa Nichols as the keynote speaker. And it was a great summit. I really appreciate you and Andressa for having done that. This was your second one, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Mhm.
Second one.
Uh-huh.
Every year we're doing it. Next year will be live, hopefully. That should not, unless there's another pandemic that happens.
Let's hope not.
Let's hope not.
So tell us, what is the name of your company?
Company? Sure. So, I always like to say I wear two hats. I'm still an active investor,
Mhm.
in what we're doing on the, in the investing world. That's called the Derosa Group. I started that with my husband about 15 years ago. And where our focus there is mostly multifamily,
Mhm.
buying, mid-sized to large multifamilies, apartment complexes in the East Coast. And we're starting a fund that's going to start diversifying in other asset classes, which we're excited about. And then, but that's that side of the business. And then my huge passion and a lot of my time, most of my time goes to the real estate investor community. And that's called the real estate investor, community. And that's where a lot of my energy and time is going.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so working with, trying to balance those two things, what is the kind of tagline for your real estate investor community? I know there's three kind of
Yeah.
pillars.
Pillars. Yeah. Well,
I want you to say it, not me.
when we started, when Jess and I were partnering together, we were actively flipping properties together and doing it. We probably did less than 10 projects together. We did a lot together and we were working together. And, whenever we got together, it was like, where's the other women that, are, we can connect with and support, not just for ourselves, but other, like, long together. So you can give and get, because there's a circle of it, right? It's not like anyone's done. It's not like you're good. So when we were looking for it, we couldn't find anything, and so we really wanted to create something because there was a need for ourselves, but also we knew there might be hopefully a need for other women. And obviously that's proven in the last few years, and women do seek this out. But yeah, our mission statement when we started, and it still continues to be, is to empower women to live a financially free and balanced life. And we always say whatever balance looks like, because quite honestly, this weekend I was off balance, right? It wasn't like I took a break in the summit and then hung out with my kids. There's a myth to balance, right? We can get into that whole topic. So when we say balance, there's really no like in the moment balance. But when we created this community, we said how important balance is for women. We said it's a collective balance, right? So you're all in on your business one day, and then you're all in on your kids in a moment. That's what we meant, so I know there's a lot of conversation out there about balance these days, but that's what we meant when we created it. And then we still love it in the sense of what women need, because we are overwhelmed. There is a lot of hats and a lot of things pulling at women, especially because they are caretakers. They're at the helm of a lot of things. They're not single focused. I don't know a lot of women who just are entrepreneurs. They're just not moms. They're just not one thing. So that's why we create this community, is that we want financial freedom for all women. We live longer than men. We outlive men. We actually make great investors. We just don't do it enough. We're very cautious as a collective, right? Not everyone, but collectively. So that we're changing that trajectory. So women, as they live longer, can have more financial freedom and also do it in a way that works for them.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. And so kind of give us, give the audience kind of like your background from how you got to kind of where you are
Where
now,
I am.
where you came from.
I just woke up one day with this enormous passion, right? And I did. It's funny, Vera, I think about my life, and I do think about that a lot, because sometimes if you don't stop, everyone needs to do this more, right? Stop and kind of like, how did I get to where I am?
Right.
And that could be good and bad sometimes, right? If you're frustrated about something, it's like, there's always a path. There's always small decisions that lead up to something bigger. It doesn't happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight, especially investing, right? It just doesn't happen overnight. So for me, when I started working professionally, I was in grad school getting my degree in social work. And I think that was really when I started to become very I started to work with the women who had, and there's a lot of field placements I had women had a mental illness and some sort of drug addiction. That was their dual, diagnosed, if you will. And that was the type of people I was working with. Okay. So 2 of my field placements were all women focused. So I started to become very intrigued and passionate about helping women in the world. And that's a very, very big statement, but I just got very hooked on, it's like, wow, I really want to help women. If I'm going to help someone or a group, not children, people, like my father's a teacher. I'm a horrible teacher. You don't want me being a school teacher. I would be horrible at it. I'd be like, just listen, come on, you don't want me doing that. And I've done it, and I subbed, and I'm like the worst sub. But anyway, but women, adult women, I've been always, even young women, I appreciate, but the adults, I like teaching and serving adults, and I like them to be women. And then when I went to corporate, I went from getting my field placement. Before I went to corporate, I actually wrote a business plan 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And the business plan was to create a women's organization.
Okay.
It was called Love Through Action, was the name of my foundation that I was going to start 20 years ago. And I was going to help women in particular get on their feet and create, the lives they want. That was what I did. I wrote a whole business plan 20 years ago, long before all of this. So nothing ever happened, and it was just a planted seed. And then when I went into corporate, I decided not to go into social work. I went into corporate and started doing team buildings and working with coaching employees and really getting on the soft skills training. That was what I did professionally for over 10 years before leaving to have my son in 2013. So anyway, long story short, during my consulting, which was over 10 years, I always gravitated towards the women leaders and the women entrepreneurs and the women business ladies. That was just always I couldn't just only work with them, but I always kind of enjoyed it. I gravitated towards that. So, long story short, when Andres and I started talking about what we were really passionate about, she has a shared passion of supporting women and who we wanted to serve. That was one of the first questions we said, who do we want to serve? And both of us answered women. And then we started to get a little more refined of, because that's a big one too. So our niche is really out of like a long passion we both have for different reasons, for different, situations.
Uh-oh. One moment. Let me pause.
Ways of zooming.
Okay. Sorry about that. Well, that's great. So actually, the business plan that you had written 20 years ago kind of was maybe a skeletal plan for what launched into being the real estate investor community.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And I actually forgot that's the other thing is when sometimes I feel like people always say, "Oh, find your passion." I don't think you have to find your passion. I don't think it's like lost somewhere. It's not like, you know what I mean? Like there's no finding people's passion. I think it's really connecting with it and discovering it. And just like, I think it's within us. I think it's within every person. Whether you're conscious to it or not is a different question. Whether you're aligned with it, whether you're utilizing it is a whole other conversation, right? It's a bigger conversation, but finding it is not, to me, is like the worst word to use because it's not anywhere else except inside of you.
Right.
So, and for me, it really was something that was within me. I wasn't consciously thinking about, oh, how do I bring that? How do I create I never thought I'd be doing what I'm doing, honestly, today. If you said this to me, 10 years ago. But whenever I gravitated to things, I was like, I created a blog when I had my son. I was just trying different things, So I'm like, man, I'm going to flip houses and it's going to be called the Flipping Mamas, do. And he's like, you like aspects of flipping, but you're really not, it's not like your passion. I'm like, well, I'm gonna figure it out. I do like flipping, and so I think I made like 3 offers. I didn't really get the house that I wanted, and I'm like, all right, this isn't working. I just wasn't committed to it. I wasn't. And flipping for me and my husband were always like, it was a means to an end. It wasn't like this passion we had either. So yeah, passion is interesting and it has to all connect, and it all has to like, is there a need? I mean, I could have been passionate about empowering women in real estate investing, but literally no one could have been interested, right? It could have been just my passion.
Right.
And, you know what I mean? And then everyone else is like, that's great, Liz, but I have no interest in that. So there's a beautiful thing that happens that someone has a passion, they have an interest, and then there's a need.
Right.
It all has to kind of fit for things to kind of like a movement to happen, in my opinion. Yep. It's not just me. It's not like, hey, Liz has a passion. That's awesome. Well, no, there has to be people who want and need what we're doing, right? If there wasn't, then it would be useless, what we're doing, right?
This is true. And so with things that have happened in this last year, with the pandemic and whatnot, how has that kind of, how have you and your husband and your team, I guess, really, how have you adjusted and made that kind of transition to dealing with your business within the pandemic?
Yeah, I'm really grateful, Vera, when the pandemic started, and for the last 5 years, from a multifamily perspective, we've kind of gone all in, and from that asset class perspective, but we have diversified our geographical locations in terms of where we invest. So I'm really grateful that we had diversified where we invest because it really did make a difference. Right. So some of our assets in New Jersey took a little more of a hit than our assets maybe in North Carolina did. Right. Our building in North Carolina thrived during COVID for a lot of different reasons. Our couple of our assets in New Jersey did not thrive during COVID, maybe maintained. So, so I'm grateful that we positioned ourselves a number of years ago for diversification, if you will. Just at least from a geographical perspective, from an asset class, yes, we're heavily in multifamily. Were we nervous when it first happened? If all of our tenants didn't pay their rent and how long could we figure things out? Yeah, I think us and every other owner of any sort of multifamily or rental unit was concerned. It proved to be not as bad as everyone thought, right? Depending again what you owned and where you own them, but the other part of the multifamily place was that it became even more popular. Multifamily was hot prior, but then you had all this institutional money, all these commercial investors, these large family office investors, right? People who have literally millions of dollars who are not putting it there into commercial or on that side of it. They're putting, they want to get involved in multifamily. So the competition increased incredibly,
Okay.
more than we've ever seen.
Okay.
As a result of COVID, right? Because you have all this, and you have all this money flooding that asset class.
Right.
So what does that do? It increases offers, and we're selling a building in North Carolina. We have it under contract. We had 30 offers, 30.
Wow.
30.
Wow.
So you want to talk, and even best and final, it's crazy. It's crazy. So, I mean, we're excited because we're going to be doubling our investors' money, right? We're really pumped because we're going to, even though it was smaller, shorter time frames, a 3-year hold, but we're literally going to be doubling our investors' money. So, I mean, you can't beat that, right? And we're so excited about that.
Yeah, that's amazing.
But it's a crazy market. So now, are we getting outbid on other properties? Yeah, and we're not a new investor. We're not new to the game, and we're getting outbid. Right. So, what did we learn from that? We learned also to diversify our asset classes. So that's why the fund that we're beginning on the Derosa side is exciting, because we're going to start to invest in other asset classes, not just multifamily. Okay. So, a hard money lender that we've vetted, we're going to be investing with them. Okay. I even hope to we're going to be doing some investor work, where we're going to maybe even start doing some lending from investor to investors. So that's a whole other passion that I have, is not just to support women educationally, but actually with the money, right?
Wow, that's great.
But so all those sort of things are happening, but as a result of okay, we need to be mindful of this. So yeah, to answer your question, that's kind of what we've seen.
Okay, great. And so in terms of entrepreneurship, because my podcast is about entrepreneurship and also bankruptcy, and I explained that to you early on. We were talking about, before we talked about doing this podcast, and so this particular episode is more emphasizing entrepreneurship, because that's what we're about, and you've never filed bankruptcy. But what would you tell kind of a new up and coming or startup entrepreneur right now in this time? What may be a good thing for them to do in terms of getting themselves situated to get started?
There's always in any market, I feel like there's an opportunity, right? There's opportunities everywhere, but again, it has to kind of meet, the need, the passion you have. It's all kind of like, there's like almost like a puzzle that has to be put together. And also capital. I mean, capital becomes, I didn't realize how important capital was when we started, right? So we were, buying properties and using, lines of credit, and we made a lot of mistakes, misusing money, if you will, not gambling the money, right? It's not like we did that or stole the money or anything like that. Right. But, misusing it from the perspective of like a line of credit, right? Think about it, what a line of credit is beautiful to be done now, is to be used. Lines of credit are beautiful from the sense of using them for a short-term use, and then putting that money back, right? That's the whole point. We didn't do that early on. We had a line of credit that we used for a long-term asset, and it has been 10 years, and it'll be paid off after the sale of this property we're selling. It's taken that long, right? It takes long when you start to, again, not misuse, but focus on how to utilize your capital. And I think from an entrepreneurial perspective, you may have capital, you may have somebody who's the money partner, but the use of that money and being a steward of it and protecting it and being conservative with it, I really wish I wish we were more like that when we started. And I think, something I would recommend, and highly recommend. I mean, you have to really be a good money manager. People don't talk about that. They think about the visionary and the salesperson and all those sort of things. And that's all important when you're starting a business, any kind of business. But you or someone has to be managing that money to the T, and being very mindful of how is that going to get paid off, and how are we going to do this. And I mean, we use credit cards to buy property. Would I recommend that to anyone now? Probably not. That wouldn't be like my number one recommendation. Did it get us to where we needed to go, and did we make it all right? Yes. Okay. But our journey was long, right? It wasn't like this in a year we were there, right? So if you start to shift, and sometimes make decisions that you don't make later, it's going to take you, like I said, I mean, we're taking a phenomenal sale of a building, and not all of it, but a good portion of it. We're paying off a line of credit. Wouldn't it be wonderful to use that money for another, like a vacation rental? Wouldn't that be awesome? But
Right.
that's not what we need to, you need to continually keep your business healthy and make things right. But hey, all learn lessons, right? And we always are learning.
Right.
But I will just say that most entrepreneurs don't think about the importance of being a money manager early on. They just, there's other things that pop in their head. And I feel like that's probably one of the most important things to have and to know.
Right. Right. And so what I think sometimes ends up happening is they get caught up in how do I get the capital that I need, to keep the business running,
Absolutely.
or to grow the business, or whatever, the case may be. And they kind of lose sight of the fact that, oops, wait a minute, I got to manage it, in a proper way so that it still maximizes my return on my investment. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So where are all your different properties at this time?
So we got our start, as you know, Vera, we got our start in New Jersey. So we actually bought our first property in Pennsylvania,
Okay.
Roxborough, which then we did a 1031 into Ewing, New Jersey. We bought some small multis, and then we really had a huge passion, and we still have a passion for improving and revitalizing Trenton.
Okay.
That's a whole other conversation we can have about, participating in a market versus changing a market. And you can only participate in a market. You can't change a market. And I think we learned that through investing in buildings in Trenton, because we have improved buildings, and we still own properties, and we continue to. But we learned in the momentum that you cannot be in charge of a market. You just can't. Unless you are literally buying the entire city or the entire town.
Right.
You can only participate. So if things aren't moving fast enough, you have to be mindful of that as you're investing. So you just can't control it all. And I think we would have loved to have seen more progress quicker in the city, because we still do believe in the city and what it can be. We then started to kind of diversify. From someone sent us a deal in Philadelphia. That was like our first, larger multi. It was an 18 unit. And then that led us to Pennsylvania, which was Lancaster. And that was the first time we invested outside of our region. For the first 8 years, we invested everything internally. Sorry, within a half hour. And then going an hour and a half drive, thought we were going across the world. It was like a big deal. We're like, how are we going to do this? This is crazy, and that was 5 years ago. That wasn't that long ago.
Right.
But anyway, so Pennsylvania, we still own that building. It's a great building. It's a 50 unit in the Lancaster area. And we're building on the land as well, which is we're growing there. It's a great, little sub-market. And then our other buildings are in North Carolina and Kentucky. So we own 2 larger multis in Lexington, Kentucky, which is another, not that it was never on the hottest market list, but it's a great stable market. Most people think Louisville when they think of, Kentucky, but Lexington's got so many great things happening. And then we own a building in Fayetteville that we're selling, and then we own in Winston-Salem as well.
Great.
So 300 units. So yeah, North Carolina, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, in the 4 states.
Great. That's great. And do you have any kind of like plans now of doing anything outside of those states, or are you just going to wait and see what happens?
We have a property under contract in Kentucky. So we really are focused on like the markets that we're in. We are looking at other, one of our team members, as you study them, I always say like the markets to look in are those, sub markets, the markets that are an hour and a half from a hot market, that there's affordability there. Affordability drives everything. And if there's affordability and there's safety and there's jobs and a lot of different types of jobs, those are really good. Again, beyond like the market analysis gurus out there, those are really good pieces of the recipe. So, a market that meets those needs, especially job diversity. One thing we did learn through COVID is the markets that we had buildings that had a variety of different types of jobs is really helpful versus all healthcare or all tech or all one thing, right? Because if that one thing goes away, where you are, right? You're not in the best position. You're something else that I want to say, but I don't want to be saying that.
I know what you mean. Without
Get more cursing more as I get older here. But anyway, that's something we did learn. And so those are the kind of markets we look for, is those stable workforce housing, affordable communities that are safe, people want to move to, and that are not on the, hottest growing markets either, because those are going to be, they're going to be overpriced, especially in this market.
Right.
They won't make sense financially. But yeah, that in the Southeast, I think we're looking at something in Georgia. We really like the Southeast a lot.
Okay.
It's we like that it's on the East Coast. We visit the properties a lot. We don't want to go across the country. It's, we're not looking in Arizona, anywhere else
Right.
besides
Right.
the Southeast. We are lending, which is kind of cool. We're getting into that space of, we've always invested in our own deals. So we're actually doing a private lending out. We did a HELOC on our house, and we
Okay.
pulled that money down. And of course, we're investors. So of course we're going to use that money for
You
a property or something.
got to use every piece of real estate.
Exactly. So we had bought a foreclosure, me and Matt, to live in. So anyway, long story short, we're actually lending on a mobile home park in Florida.
Nice.
And so Florida is a booming market. So, there's a lot of things happening there. So that's a market we would definitely consider as well. Just depends on where, because it's just a crazy growing market too.
So tell our audience, kind of, how do you go from, you and Matt, who's your husband and business partner, how do you kind of go from there to building a team? Because even though, you're in the real estate space, building a team, it doesn't kind of really matter what business you're in. In order for, anyone, any business, any job, any, business to grow and expand, they have to have a team. And so how did you all, go from there to building your team?
Yeah, one of my favorite topics, because my consulting work for over a decade was consulting companies on team building.
Oh,
so
great.
yeah,
Wow.
so
And you're an authority.
I really, I don't know if I'm authority on much, but definitely this topic I could speak to, because, it's interesting, because it is a team sport, especially in large multi, because it is so hard to do it yourself. It's very rare to see like a syndicator by themselves doing the raising the money, the everything part of the puzzle. So how did we do it? Yeah, Matt and I did everything for many years. It was him and I. I was continually working. He quit his job when we got married, and we brought in different partners. We moved too quickly with partnerships. We've had some great partners and partners that have not worked out. I'll just say that. And early on, you don't have money to pay anyone, right?
Right.
So the one way to do it, and I'm not saying partnerships is just when you don't have money to pay people. I don't mean it like that. But it is one strategy. Like, hey, we're partners. We can kind of go all in on this vision. You do this, I do that.
Right.
It is a really helpful strategy in investing, building an investment portfolio, when you can do that. So you don't have to I got to pay you this. I got to pay, you kind of get paid on the cash flow and as you build.
Right.
So that was a strategy we jumped into very quickly, and we just didn't do the necessary. How do you really vet someone and move slowly? And we were just like, oh, you're interested in this, and we are too. And I think about it now, it was just literally just jumping into bed with people too quickly, not to be too graphic, but it's just like, whoa, why do we move so fast? You shouldn't move that fast with partnerships. Now, teams are different, right? These are folks that you can subcontract. It's not as intense, right? It's not like you're going into a business marriage, I like to say. But yeah, we were even up until 5 years ago doing so much of it ourselves. We did have partners, we did have employees, and we were managing and doing all the construction on the New Jersey side. So we had a construction team. I don't know if many people know that. We had a pretty decent sized construction team. We were doing flips actively, tons of flips, and have rentals at the same time. As I think about team, it can get complex from the perspective of, where do you need to align and where do you need to be different? And in alignment, I always like to say there's areas you need to be aligned with a team, your values, your goals, your delayed gratification. I mean, if you're building something and someone needs to get paid and you can wait, you have to talk about this stuff. It's pretty important, right? Because people need different things depending on where they are in their life, what their financial situation is, right? We all kind of need different things. So those are key things you need to be aligned with. But from a team perspective, you also need diversity diversity of skills, diversity of experience, and
Right.
diversity of personality. So
Right.
personality being probably one of the most underappreciated items of that puzzle.
Mhm.
People are like, oh, you're this, I'm that, I'm an extrovert, you're an introvert. Who really cares? That doesn't really help us actually achieve our goals. Actually, that's not the case. In actually team development and all the work I did, that was always like literally within about 30% of people's success. It does come back to personality. You could
Mhm.
have the right skills, you could have the right experience, but if you don't have the right personality blends on a team, it could take, the project takes too long. The project can get over, something gets overlooked. You need detailed people with less detailed people. You need a more logical person
Right.
with a less logical person.
Right.
Andres is one of the most logical people I know I've ever worked with. And I've worked with a lot of people. Literally, she is a literal logical person. And I love her for that because I'm
Right.
so not logical. I'm so emotional, right? I make my decisions on how I feel. It's like, what are you talking about? What it's so I love her for that. I love my partnership with her and as a team member because we are very different. Our
Right.
personalities are different.
Right.
And knowing what I know about personalities, I'm so much more prepared, right, to work through that. So I'm a really big fan of teams, people outsourcing, what do I need to delegate? What do I need to eliminate? And what do I need to obviously whatever that third one is, but whatever the third one is. But I also am a big fan of teams like, what people aren't going to just hire 10 people, right? If you're an entrepreneur, I don't know about you, but like, what's the most important team member you need right now? And
Mhm.
you start slow and you start small and say, okay, how can I get this done? How can I get this done? Not do I have the money? Because you'll never have the money. It's like, am I ready to have kids? You'll never be ready to have kids. Right? We
This-
literally, it's like the perfect timing for have kids or the perfect time to start a new business. There's no perfect time. Let's just say that there isn't. So stop saying that because that's not the case.
and I love that you said that.
Just how can you? And I know for us, we're growing our Invest Her team. We're small. We're a startup in essence, in and of itself. We're not just flooding other business money. We're a standalone company, right? So we're constantly thinking, how do we build a team, right? Because there's stuff that Andres and I edited 100 of our episodes, right? Literally all of them. Her and I did those 100. We didn't do 10, 100, and then we got some help, which was wonderful.
You edited 100 of your podcast episodes.
Because her and I hold on to things sometimes too long, right? So as leaders and as women, as entrepreneurs, we need to build a team. We need to look at what's not working in our business. What can we give to others? And don't let money stand in your way of making that call. So I know for me, who's pretty frugal as a person, the sun is going to shine before you're ready to pay someone. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. So
Right.
how can you?
Right.
So I'm a big fan of like literally looking at what is holding you back right now and what kind of team member can I have, even if you barter. I mean, there's
Right.
so many creative ways to do it.
Right. Right.
But and then you start to say, how do I build a powerhouse team? And Matt has a phenomenal multifamily team right now. Am I involved on some level? Sure. Am I part of their day to day making decisions on, because it's worked for us. So although I was so involved in our business for many years, and the day to day, I've kind of been more advisory, if you will, on a kind of macro level, so I can get into other things. But yeah, have to start to build that team of who do we need and how do we pay everyone and
Mhm.
who gets paid on the sale. And there's a lot of creative things with real estate. It's not just
Mhm.
salaries, right? So
Mhm. Right. 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 So the third thing you were thinking about is automate.
yes, thank
Kind
you.
of automate, eliminate, and delegate.
And I'm the worst at that, Vera. I'll be doing something and Andres is like, why are you sending that email? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't naturally think how to, but I have to stop, you know, put my big girl panties on and say, what can we do differently here? Right. We all do. We just can't
Yes.
keep doing things by autopilot.
Yes.
You're not going to grow a company by yourself.
Right.
And if you do, it's only going to get so big. So it's really in the growth of things, especially how passionate we are about what we're doing with Invest Her. It needs and deserves a big team. That's how I
Mhm.
believe it. It's
Right.
just a matter of figuring it out and finding other people who believe in that too.
Mhm. And it's great because I noticed, you're taking baby steps in terms of how you've grown it. Because I know a couple of years ago, I went to one of the investor meetups, and that was in like the Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area. I forget
Yeah.
exactly where it was. And Sharon Miss Marini,
Yep. Yep.
Mancini,
Massini.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
Sharon Mancini was leading that then. And I just noticed, like, you guys put it out there and women come to you and say, hey, I want to do a meetup in my area. So it's gone from, just the two of you and Andressa, to now 7,000 meetups in different, cities all throughout the United States. And that's phenomenal. That's just phenomenal. So in closing, I always like to ask my guests these three things, because this is kind of the theme of my podcast. I want to know one thing that you can give my audience that will inspire, one thing that would educate, and one thing that would motivate. My whole thing is inspiration, education, and motivation. So give me any order you want to put it in. I don't care. Go ahead.
Like a tip or a suggestion.
Right, for each one of those topics: motivation, inspiration, and education.
Okay.
Take your time.
Motivation, inspiration, and
education.
To write everything down here.
That's all right.
Or I don't remember things. Yeah, I mean, in terms of education, I'm, and it obviously depends on what asset class and what they're focused on, but the idea of really looking at your life in the next 5 years.
Okay.
And really envisioning, like, in order to, that's probably more inspirational, or motivational, but I think we get really tied up with okay, do I want to get into this asset class, or should I get into vacation rentals, or, or should I do this? And it's very overwhelming. It's very overwhelming.
Yes. There's so many facets to really.
Absolutely. And really, quite honestly, any business should be a means to something bigger you're creating for your life, right? It's not like this thing that's going to be just a little effort and it's going to take a lot of effort. You might as well know where you're headed and how this shapes up to your bigger vision. So, that's just more of like a motivational like tip to do, but really to create that 5-year vision. What does your perfect day look like? What do you want to be doing? Who do you want to be with? Where do you want to be? Like, map it out. It doesn't matter. Like when I said, and it's very hard as women. Oh, I don't know how that's going to happen. I'm not sure how that's going to happen. Yeah, listen, I do that too. It doesn't matter, but visioning is really powerful because you're really able to see something bigger, and then you start to fit the pieces in, and the decision making becomes much more simpler versus like, well, anything can go.
Okay.
So that's a great. That's just, maybe that's a little motivational and inspirational. I would say just don't give up.
Okay.
As well. I mean, that's probably, also a little more of the inspirational part, but there was so many times, Vera, that it would have been a lot easier in the short term to give up. Money getting stolen, ending in court, losing money. Yeah. I mean, I can go on and on about all the tough things that happened over the years. It's a great podcast I should record, but, and I'm going to be recording one on, how to go into $1 million of debt and get out of it. I'm going to be recording that soon because that has happened.
That would be great. And
that's happening. I just needed to honor getting to the million before I actually recorded it, obviously, because I want to be in integrity. So after we pay back the line of credit, we'll be there. So that's exciting. But that's the thing, is don't give up. Because honestly, if you said all these things are going to happen to you, it's going to take this a long amount of time. I can go on and on and on. I mean, it just makes me feel emotional when I think about it. Like, just don't give up. Literally, if you just don't give up,
right,
and you look yourself in the mirror and you don't do it alone, you'll get there. It may not be the time you think.
Right.
I do believe that when we think something's going to take 5 years or 2 years, it doesn't happen always when you think. And it may happen sooner, and I hope it does.
Right.
Anything I ever set always took longer for me, or for our goals. All of them. But and then, from an educational perspective, I think key, regardless of what asset class is, find an asset class that you really want to go all in on, and go all in on it, and start educating yourself from the people that you respect.
Okay.
But don't get like sidetracked and read this book on this and this. Like, focus on one thing, one area,
right,
and then start to read as much as you can about that one thing. Right. Listen to as many podcasts about that one thing. Don't get diluted on, I'm going to listen to this and this and this. Of course, your podcast and our podcast, but it's really important to focus. So from an educational perspective, it's very overwhelming. There's a lot of content. And that's why, in our community, right, all the stuff we're doing with our membership, it's just trying to give you pieces. And so it's not overwhelming, right? It's not so like,
Right.
wow, this
Right.
is big. It
Hmm.
shouldn't feel that big. It should feel micro. So that's my suggestion from an educational perspective.
Wow. Thank you so much for taking up your time and
My
just
pleasure.
giving my audience your energy. I love it. I love how passionate you and Dressa are. And I also really love, your heart for giving and helping. I mean, a lot of people, I mean, I don't know you as personally as probably I would like to, but just whenever, I'm in your meetups, whenever I'm in, because I did the Strive program with you guys, you and Andressa, you guys just exude that need to help women, and that's just so fantastic. I really love it. So thanks again for being on my podcast, and I'll talk to you again soon, I hope.
Yes. Thank you, Vera, for having me on. Appreciate it.
Thank you.